On May 15, 2023, the city of Prague woke up shocked by the news of a murder that shook the most exclusive circles of European high society. An 18-year-old model was found dead in her luxurious apartment in the Mala Strana district, known for its historic charm and elegant residences. The case quickly drew public attention due to the victim's connection to a renowned Spanish businessman, Daniel Varela, a businessman who had built his empire from scratch and enjoyed a fortune that seemed unattainable for most. Behind the sensational headlines and media speculation, there lurked a dark story of obsession, power, and tragedy that involved not only a forbidden romance, but also a web of secrets that culminated in an act of brutal violence. This documentary will reconstruct the events that led to the tragic outcome, exploring the character and lives of the two main protagonists of this story. Daniel Varela was a man who embodied the dream of success in the business world. At 60 years old, he was the founder and CEO of Varela and Asociados, a prestigious investment firm with offices in Barcelona, New York, and Hong Kong. His personal fortune was estimated at more than €500 million, an achievement that placed him among the most influential businessmen in Europe. Born into a modest family in a small town in Catalonia, Daniel stood out for his perseverance and ambition, attributes that led him to leave home at the age of 18 to study economics in Barcelona. As the years went by, Daniel grew into an elegant and charismatic man. His silver hair, always perfectly coiffed, matched his designer suits, which he wore with a confidence that only power could bestow. Despite the wrinkles that marked his face, he maintained an imposing presence. His 1.85-meter height, his athletic demeanor, and his steel blue eyes, which seemed to penetrate the soul of anyone who looked at him, made him the center of attention wherever he went. However, beneath that charming facade hid a man with a volatile temper and a controlling personality. Daniel had been married for over 25 years to a French architect named Sophie, with whom he had 2 children, now grown up. But their marriage fell apart when his obsession with work and interest in younger women became apparent. Following his divorce in 2019, Daniel began frequenting luxury circles in search of female companionship, becoming what is known today as a sugar daddy. Emma Dominguez, the other protagonist of this story, was the complete opposite of Daniel in terms of origin and personality. Born in Madrid in 2005, Emma grew up in a humble environment, being the youngest daughter of a single mother who worked as a nurse. From a young age, Emma stood out for her extraordinary beauty. With a height of 1.75 meters, a slender and toned figure, and a face that seemed sculpted by the gods, it was no wonder that many considered her a future star of the catwalks. Her dark brown hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, framing green eyes that captured everyone's attention. At 16, Emma was discovered by a talent scout in a shopping mall in Madrid, marking the start of her meteoric career as a model. Her debut at Milan Fashion Week in 2022 catapulted her to fame, attracting the attention of international designers and photographers. But behind her glamorous image, Emma was an insecure young woman, still adjusting to the fast-paced world of fashion and dealing with the pressure to be perfect at all times. In February 2023, Emma was invited to participate in Prague Fashion Week, an event that attracts the elite of Central and Eastern Europe. It was in this context that she met Daniel Varela, who attended as the main sponsor of the event. This chance encounter would mark the beginning of a relationship that would change their lives forever. On February 20, 2023, the luxurious Augustine Hotel in Prague became the meeting point for designers, models, entrepreneurs, and celebrities during Fashion Week. Emma, who was walking for a famous Italian brand, did not go unnoticed by Daniel, who watched her from the front row with obvious interest. During the post-show reception, Daniel did not miss the opportunity to approach Emma. With his usual charm, he praised her for her performance on the catwalk and offered her his card, hinting that he could help her advance in her career. Emma was initially intimidated by the attention of a man so much older than her, but also intrigued by his sophistication and the possibilities that a connection with someone so influential could bring her. She accepted his invitation to dinner the next day, thinking it would be a simple business conversation. However, that dinner would mark the beginning of something much more complicated. The date took place at the Bellevue restaurant, one of Prague's most exclusive restaurants, overlooking the Vltava River. Daniel spared no expense, ordering the finest wines and gourmet dishes. Throughout the dinner, he was charming and attentive, listening with interest to Emma's stories about her childhood and her modeling career. For her part, Emma was impressed by the life of luxury Daniel described, although she couldn't help but feel out of place in that world. After that first meeting, Daniel and Emma began seeing each other frequently. Daniel, accustomed to getting what he wanted, quickly wooed Emma with extravagant gifts, designer handbags, jewelry, and trips on his private jet. In March 2023, Daniel convinced Emma to move to Prague, promising her a life full of opportunities and glamour. Although she was hesitant at first, Emma eventually agreed, seeing this as a chance to escape the monotony of her life in Madrid. Daniel rented her a stylish apartment in Mala Strana, decorated with modern furniture and a view of the Charles Bridge. He also provided her with a car and chauffeur and introduced her to some of his contacts in the fashion world, ensuring that her career continued to grow. Emma, grateful for Daniel's generosity, began to develop feelings for him, although she knew their relationship was unconventional. For the first few months, Daniel and Emma's relationship seemed idyllic. They were spotted together at exclusive events, always looking like the perfect couple. While Daniel enjoyed the company of a young, beautiful woman who made him feel rejuvenated, Emma experienced a world of luxury and privilege she had never imagined. However, beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to appear. Although Daniel presented himself as a generous and protective man, his true character began to come to light during times of tension. He was extremely jealous and controlling, insisting on knowing every detail of Emma's life. He would check her phone for suspicious messages and get upset if she left without his knowledge. Emma, for her part, tried to ignore these behaviors, thinking they were a sign that Daniel really cared about her. The relationship that began as a fairy tale was destined to turn into a nightmare. As Daniel became more and more obsessed with Emma, she began to feel trapped in a life that no longer belonged to her. As the pressure mounted, tensions between them escalated, laying the groundwork for the tragic outcome that was to come. The relationship between Daniel Varela and Emma Dominguez continued to develop at a dizzying pace. What began as a superficial attraction based on glamour and luxury gradually transformed into a complex tangle of emotions, insecurities and, most dangerous of all, a growing obsession on Daniel's part. While at first Emma enjoyed the attention and advantages that her relationship with a powerful businessman provided her, she soon began to feel trapped in a world where her movements and decisions were constantly observed. As the months passed, Daniel intensified his efforts to control her. What had initially been an act of generosity and protection turned into possessive behavior. He continually gave her high-fashion clothes, jewelry, and luxury cars. But as the gifts became more ostentatious, Daniel's demands became more exacting as well. Emma, who had initially been flattered by the attention, now found it increasingly uncomfortable to be under Daniel's constant scrutiny. In April 2023, during a gala party at the Paris Hotel, one of the most exclusive hotels in the city, Emma began to sense Daniel's possessive nature more clearly. While she chatted with some of the other guests, Daniel watched her from a distance, with a fixed and almost intimidating gaze. When Emma decided to retreat from the group to get some fresh air on the hotel balcony, Daniel followed her almost instantly. "Why are you walking away from me?" he asked in a tone that left no room for doubt. Emma, surprised by Daniel's abrupt appearance, tried to explain that she just needed a break, but Daniel didn't seem to have any of it. "You know I don't like you talking to other men, Emma. I brought you to this event, and I expect you to give me your full attention," he said, his voice firm and authoritative. Emma tried to play it down, but that night, the seed of awkwardness began to grow inside her. What at first seemed like a show of love, now felt more like a form of control. Emma began to doubt the authenticity of Daniel's feelings, and although she tried to maintain an image of perfection in front of others, in private the tensions between them began to rise. Over the next few months, Emma and Daniel's relationship became increasingly strained. Not only did Daniel begin to display jealousy toward other men in Emma's social circle, but his distrust also extended to her social media. Emma, who in her younger years enjoyed sharing her life with her followers on Instagram, began to notice that Daniel was becoming increasingly restless when she posted photos of herself without him. "Why don't you post more pictures with me?" Daniel reproached him. "What are you trying to hide?" Emma tried to reassure him, explaining that social media was a form of personal expression and meant nothing beyond that. However, discomfort grew when Daniel began to control what Emma posted, demanding that she remove certain photos with other men and only share images that featured him. Within weeks, Daniel's behavior became even more controlling and possessive. In May 2023, Emma decided to attend a party organized by a modeling agency she worked with in Madrid. Although Daniel had tried to dissuade her from traveling, she decided to go anyway, seeking some independence in her life. During the party, Emma met up with several old friends and colleagues, including her ex-boyfriend from Madrid, who also worked as a model. The conversation between them was innocent, but when Emma returned to Prague and told Daniel about the encounter, he reacted in a way that left her surprised. "How dare you talk to that guy?" Daniel asked, his voice filled with fury. Don't you understand that this humiliates me? You've forgotten what you have to do with me." The accusation came as an unexpected blow to Emma. Why did Daniel feel so threatened by someone from her past? Someone with whom he had only had a youthful relationship. What seemed like a simple social encounter turned into an emotional confrontation that left Emma baffled. "It was just a chat, Daniel. Nothing more," she tried to explain. But Daniel wasn't listening. The argument quickly escalated, and for the first time in their relationship, Emma felt vulnerable and trapped in a relationship that no longer seemed so desirable. As tensions mounted, Emma realized that her life had changed irrevocably since Daniel entered her world. While he had provided her with luxuries and opportunities, he had also isolated her from her family and close friends. Daniel had begun to impose restrictions on who she could interact with, and though Emma tried to maintain her independence, the relationship became more suffocating. Daniel's behavior was no longer limited to jealousy. He had also begun to make small, disparaging comments about her modeling career, questioning her ability to stay relevant without his help. On several occasions, Emma began to hear his complaints about the fashion shows and photo shoots she attended without him. "Why do you have to work with other men?" she would ask him, implying that only he could be the true support in her professional life. This mounting pressure culminated in an argument during a trip to Venice in June 2023. Daniel had arranged a romantic weekend in the city to reconnect, but over dinner at one of the most exclusive restaurants along the Grand Canal, the conversation took a dark turn. As Emma was telling him about her desire to expand her career, Daniel abruptly interrupted her. "Do you really think someone else is going to help you? That someone is going to give you what I give you?" he asked, his tone full of disdain. Emma, tired of Daniel's advances, replied firmly, "What I do with my career is my decision, Daniel. I'm not here just to please you." Emma's response lit a spark in Daniel, who abruptly stood up from the table, leaving Emma sitting there, shocked and alone. That was the moment when Emma began to wonder if she could really continue in such a destructive relationship. However, the fear of losing the life of luxury she had begun to enjoy kept her trapped in a relationship that no longer felt like hers. By the end of June 2023, the differences between Daniel and Emma had reached a point of no return. Although Emma did not want to face the reality that the relationship was about to fall apart, she began to seriously consider distancing herself from Daniel. However, in the darkest moments of the relationship, Emma feared for her safety. Daniel had become unpredictable, and discussions about their future together were becoming more frequent. Meanwhile, Daniel felt like he was losing everything. In his mind, Emma had stopped being his muse and had become a possession to be controlled. As the days passed, the fear of losing her consumed him. The obsession with her, with having her completely for himself, pushed him to a place from which he could never return. Every jealous look, every reprimand, every control over his life and career, was accumulating until Daniel's anger reached an unbearable temperature. By the end of July 2023, the relationship between Daniel Varela and Emma Dominguez had reached a point of no return. What had begun as a story of luxury, glamour, and exotic travel had transformed into a relationship plagued by insecurities, excessive jealousy, and obsessive behavior. Emma no longer recognized the person she had started dating months earlier. While Daniel tried to keep her at all costs, she felt trapped in a web that kept her from her dreams and her independence. Although the life of luxury was still there, the price she was paying for it was too high. Despite everything Emma had received, deep down she felt she had lost something more valuable than money: her freedom, her authenticity, and control over her life. She had tried several times to talk to Daniel about her need for space and her desire to focus on her career without being constantly watched, but he always found a way to manipulate the situation, making her feel guilty for having doubts about the relationship. One evening in late July, while Daniel was in Barcelona overseeing some business for his company, Emma took the opportunity to spend time with her family in Madrid. However, her return to Prague on August 1st was the trigger for a tragedy that seemed inevitable. Daniel had been calling her insistently throughout the trip, and although Emma did not want to ignore his constant messages and calls, she felt a growing need for distance. During that trip, Emma had found the opportunity to meet up with her ex-boyfriend, who was also in Madrid for work. The conversation with him had been innocent, but Daniel, when he found out, exploded in a fury that turned out to be the climax of his growing obsession. Emma, aware of the destructive spiral she was in, had made a decision. She did not want to continue with a relationship that no longer brought her happiness and that had become a golden cage. She planned to talk to Daniel, give him one last chance to clear things up, and finally, end the relationship. She knew it was the best thing for both of them, even though the fear of his reaction consumed her. However, on August 2nd, the situation reached a new level of danger. That morning, Emma was in her apartment in Prague, going through some job proposals for new fashion campaigns. Her mind was overwhelmed, and even though her heart was telling her to end it all, she still couldn't find the courage to do so. That was when Daniel, after weeks of harassing her by phone, unexpectedly appeared at her apartment door. The sound of the doorbell was enough to make Emma feel a pang of anxiety in her chest. She knew that this moment was going to be crucial, but she had no idea what she was about to face. Daniel burst into the apartment, his eyes fixed on Emma, but something in his attitude was no longer that of a man in love or jealousy. It was the behavior of a desperate, almost unhinged man. Without any preamble, Daniel began to shout at her. "You belong to me, Emma," he cried. "Don't you dare leave me, you won't. I don't want you to see anyone else. I don't care what you do, just don't leave me." Emma, terrified by the tone of his voice and the way he was approaching her, tried to remain calm. "Daniel, I can't do this anymore. I need my life back. You're not the person I thought you were. I don't love you anymore," she said, searching for an outlet. But with each word Emma said, Daniel's anger intensified. "Don't leave me, Emma," he repeated, moving towards her. "Don't do this to me. If you can't be with me, then you won't be with anyone." For the past few weeks, Daniel had been devising a final solution, a way to ensure that Emma would be with him forever. The fear of losing her had clouded his mind, and what started as an obsession turned into an extremely dangerous plan of action. He had begun contacting people he had worked with in the past, some linked to organized crime, to try to find a final solution. He needed to eliminate the threat he felt haunted by. The idea that Emma might run away from her life and start over without him. Through one of his old contacts in the criminal world, Daniel made a call to an Eastern European mercenary, known for his efficiency and discretion. The man, a former soldier named Igor Novak, had worked on several high-risk missions, though his methods were brutal and remorseless. Daniel did not stop to question the morality of his actions. He was willing to pay whatever it took to keep Emma in his life, at any cost. On August 3rd, the mercenary Igor arrived in Prague, and that same evening Daniel gave him clear instructions: eliminate Emma. He gave him an advance payment and an additional amount to be given to him after completing the mission. The execution of the plan was simple. Emma was to die in a way that would look like an accident or suicide, so that Daniel could clear himself of any suspicion. That same evening, Daniel returned to Emma's apartment, where chaos had already begun to brew. The argument that took place in the apartment that evening was a prelude to what was to come. When Emma, still trying to escape Daniel's control, confessed to him that she was determined to leave and that she would soon talk to her family about what had happened, Daniel completely lost control. At that moment, Igor Novak was nearby, waiting for Daniel's signal to act. The tragedy began when, during a physical fight between them in the apartment, Emma tried to push Daniel out of the room and lock herself in. It was then that Igor, who had been instructed by Daniel to stay close to the place, burst onto the scene. With chilling coldness, the mercenary approached Emma and, without saying a word, attacked her. Within a couple of seconds, Emma was brutally beaten and wounded with a knife. Daniel watched, motionless, as the mercenary finished what he himself had orchestrated. Emma's blood soaked the ground as she lay lifeless on the floor, the young model who had been his obsession and his love, now just a memory of a past in which luxury and control seemed the only way out. After the crime was committed, Daniel tried to act normally, calling the police and declaring that he had found Emma's lifeless body in her apartment, apparently a suicide. However, irregularities at the crime scene soon began to raise suspicions. Daniel's version did not match the evidence at the scene. The police soon discovered that the young model had been murdered meticulously, and not by her own choice. Investigations and DNA testing eventually led to Daniel and his contact, the mercenary Igor, who were arrested and brought to justice. The case became one of the most shocking in Europe in 2023, unraveling a story of obsession, control, and manipulation that culminated in a tragedy of unthinkable proportions. Emma's life, full of dreams and broken promises, ended in brutal fashion, while Daniel, the man once admired, was convicted of his heinous crime. The case of Daniel Varela and Emma Dominguez is one of those stories that reminds us that behind appearances, the darkest realities often hide. A love story turned into obsession, a meeting that seemed to be the opportunity of a lifetime, but ended in an unbearable tragedy. The price of possession and control, when taken to extremes, can be higher than anyone could imagine.